you're ignoring the fact that many classical pieces have texts which are pornographic. For example, Carmina Burana, which was taken from a Latin piece that was supposed to have been pornographic. Do you want to censor this? Is that going to offend somebody?
No, I sure don't. I've sung Carmina Burana. It's one of my favorite pieces. Okay. Country music, however, is not mainstream. Rock singing, Prince's album, for example, Purple Rain and Darling Nikki, has sold over 10 million copies. That's a lot of copies sold to teenagers. So has his album Dirty Minds, in which he talks about incest and the joys of that. I see there's nothing wrong with sex, but there is something wrong with preaching incest, masturbation, and a casual attitude towards sex to teenagers.
What's wrong with masturbation?
Let me pick this time for a break, and we'll be right back because we're up against the clock. We'll pick up with Mr. Zappa's point. Stay with us. Nightmatch continues. Frank Zappa, let me come back and let you define your own sort of position on this, which is, it seems at first glance, an absolute First Amendment defense of these kinds of lyrics.
I'm a constitutional fundamentalist.
Okay.
I like the Constitution. I like it the way it is. I don't want to have it rewritten for me by people in Washington.
Okay, let me just stay with the question then. Do the same lyrics that offend Ms. Stroud offend you? No, whether you want them banned or not?
No, the lyrics don't offend me. The way the material is presented and the idea behind the material offends me. The crassness of the business offends me. But I have no problem with any kind of lyrics that deal with matters of physical activity.
Do you believe that any of those lyrics that she pointed to are detrimental to your children, her children,
no,
of the age group that she's talked about?
Absolutely not. And let me point out one thing. This could be a really great publicity stunt, and I'm sure the media eats it up, because you get to have a term, porno rock. It sounds terrific. You're going to get a lot of mileage out of it. But the real fact is this. Every authoritarian regime likes to get this little hook going for them. You tell people sex equals sin. And now I'm going to save you from sex. And that will save you from sin. And then you get to go to heaven. And we did it for you. So send in your check today. That's what this stuff is.
Candy Stroud.
Love is pure, love is gentle, love is kind, love is not crude, love is not lewd, love is not Prince singing, if your man ain't no good, come on over to my neighborhood, jump in the sack and I'll jack you off. That is not the way the children should learn about love, and especially when their parents don't even know what they're listening to.
Love is not sex. Sex is an activity that has nothing to do with love. Sex is a physical activity. You do not have to love someone or even yourself in order to do sex.
Love and sex implies responsibility, implies commitment, and implies consequence. And today, when we have the highest teenage pregnancy rate in the world, and 50% of all teenagers losing their virginity by the time they're 18, there is something going on in the country that is wrong. And whether or not it's coming from rock music or movies or the advertising that they're seeing, it's coming from a number of factors in our society, and I'm convinced that rock music is one of them.
We will be back. Our debaters, Frank Zappa and Candy Stroud. The question has to do with rock music lyrics. Should they be banned? Should there be some legislative reform? Or should the rock industry simply accept the First Amendment and have its performers provide the audience whatever they are responding to? We'll be back as Nightmatch continues. Stay with us. Of people who are opposed to some of the lyrics of rock music is they believe those lyrics have a detrimental effect on their children. Here is an excerpt from an interview by Phyllis George on the CBS Morning News with a psychiatrist about the impact of rock music and the lyrics.
Well, actually, the research has all been done with college students. There are 3 separate studies now available. All of those show that college students become more desensitized to violence when they see, say, a video like by the Rolling Stones where they sing about chopping up a woman, putting her pieces in the refrigerator, and taking her out and eating her.
It's pretty gruesome, I must say.
Yeah, it is pretty gruesome. That, when, you know, of course, the heavy metal trend, I see it in my own psychiatric practice. Young people come into my practice, they're into heavy metal, maybe have the barbed wire earrings and the spiked jewelry, and almost always they are, you know, having serious problems with antisocial behavior with their parents, with the school, with the police. They really get into the subculture. These are their heroes, and when their heroes are singing, making violence acceptable, it does have definitely a harmful effect.
That's Dr. Thomas Radecki with the National Coalition on Television Violence on the CBS Morning News. Question coming back to the question of the detrimental impact. Are young people going to be exposed to those kinds of lyrics and that kind of conversation regardless of whether it is in or out of rock music? In all kinds of media, all kinds of publications, and does not, as others have argued, the reform and the management or the instruction begin at home?
Instruction does begin at home, Charlie. The problem is that with rock music, it is such an extraordinarily potent force in the life of a teenager, and they're listening to so many hours a day, and the problem has been that parents have not known the lyrics that their children have been listening to. There has been no parental control, and there's been no restriction whatsoever in the movie industry. A kid can walk into a store at the age of 9 years old or 10 years old and buy an album that deals with forcing a woman to have oral sex at gunpoint, or an album like the problem is they'll go and they'll buy a hit song like Jungle Love by Morris Day and the Time. What they don't know when they get the album home is they flip it over and they've got If the Kid Can't Make You Come, Nobody Can, which gives you 5 entire minutes of conversation that is only heard in sexual intercourse. It makes the whole process very, very lewd.
I think masturbation is really good, and I think that more people in America should do it. And first of all, it would help your teenage pregnancy rate.
But
and also,
while that's a good line, Frank, that's not the issue here.
Well, I
whether
think it is for
masturbation
her
is or
because
is
she
not
has a
good for you.
masturbation fixation. She is seized upon the idea of masturbation. Is like, if we stop that, then our children will be safe. Come on, give me a break. This is really, you know the word for what this is. It starts with a bull and it ends with something else. This is baloney. This is a publicity stunt, Mr. Rose.
A publicity stunt by people?
By people like this, because she is not the only one who is believing in this sort of thing. It works. You come out, anybody who says, we're going to stop pornography. First of all, look at what pornography is. It exists because there's a market for it. And you know why the market is there? Because people have trouble becoming aroused. Pornography is supposed to arouse you. Americans need to be aroused because many of them are physically incapable of being aroused.
I got
That's
1
why
minute
Dr.
before we go against
Ruth
the
is
break.
on there.
Candy Stroud.
I think masturbation is a healthy thing, but I don't think that masturbation should be taught on a record. I also think that what we're really talking about, Charlie, is a consumer issue, that it is not appropriate for a young child of the age of 10 or 11 or 12 to be able to go in without any parental consent or any guidance to buy anything that they please, whether or not it has to do with Satanism or violent sex or rape, whatever, that like the movie industry, that the music industry should police itself and have a rating system so that parents have a handle on the information that their children are getting.
In 30 seconds, can you deal with the issue of whether this is a promotional stunt by the people involved or in fact is legitimate reflection of concern by a whole cross-section of parents?
If this were a publicity stunt, I don't think the Justice Department would have had hearings on the connection between pornography and rock music and sexual exploitation. If this were a publicity stunt, I don't think that the Commerce Committee would be seriously concerned in having hearings in the fall on pornographic rock music.
Nightmatch continues. Frank Zappa, Candy Stroud, stay with us. Rock music, music that some say all too often is filled with talk of sex and violence. Here's our resolution again. Some rock music is becoming increasingly pornographic, offensive, and detrimental to children. The rock industry should clean up its act or face legislative reforms. Our debaters are writer Candy Stroud and rock singer Frank Zappa. Do you find that the lyrics are in any way, regardless of whether you do or do not agree with the sexuality expressed, detrimental to children?
Let me tell you how it is detrimental to children. Here is a place that I think we can agree, okay? Here is the detriment to a child's mind. You have stated that they listen to too many hours of music. Do you know why they do? Because children in the United States today are marginally literate. They don't read. They get their information from watching television and from listening to records, okay? So you have a channel into the imagination, into the memory banks of a whole generation of kids who don't read. They don't get any thrill out of reading. So you have a problem when the music industry seems to conspire to pump whatever kind of bilge the traffic will bear down that channel. I resent that, whether it contains sex or contains references to values that are insincere.